Hey, what's going on everybody? This is Ian, and in this video I want to show you a really cool way to conditionally include properties in an object that you're building with JavaScript. So you can do this, you can use this to also conditionally render certain things. If you're using React, for example, and you want to include some HTML or a custom component, you can include it conditionally based on the code that I'm about to show you. So this applies to all JavaScript frameworks, React obviously being one of the most popular, but let's dive into it. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So just in terms of demoing what I'm talking about, you can see I've got this table here, and if you look at this object here, base config, you can see that I've got some properties: name, John Doe, age 30, occupation developer. So here's these three rows right here. So then we have two more additional rows. If you look at the user config, which is actually the object that we're using to populate this table in the HTML, you can see that we use the spread syntax, the three dots, before the variable for base config, which is our object literal here with name, age, and occupation. So we're spreading those three properties into user config. So now the user config object now includes name, age, and occupation. Then after that, we're using the spread operator again, but inside of parentheses, we're doing something here. And what we're doing is we're using the logical operator double ampersand, the AND operator. And you can see on the left-hand side, we have a variable isAdmin. And then on the right-hand side, we have an object literal with two properties, role and access level. And so here you can see the role is administrator, access level is full. Now that's because the variable on the left-hand side of the double ampersand is evaluating to true. So let's stop there for a second and talk about how the AND operator works in JavaScript. So you might, if you just use it, let's just pop open the console here, and let's just say true, double ampersand, true. So it returns true, right? And you've probably seen this table where, you know, as you're learning the logical operators and or, etc., you'll see like true and false, and you'll go through and you'll see, okay, well, in order for it to return true, both sides of that operand need to be true. In order for it to return false, either side of the operand needs to be false. And so you think, oh, this thing is returning a Boolean. And that's just because of the examples that we've seen it with. But truly, the left-hand side of the operand, if it's false, will return that left-hand value. And then the right-hand side will return when the left-hand side is truthy. So in the example, the first one here, because the left-hand side is truthy, it returns the right-hand side, which just happens to be the Boolean true. And then on the second one, because the left-hand side is true, it returns the right-hand side, which just happens to be false. So let's see an example of where we do something that isn't a Boolean, but evaluates to a Boolean, like null, for example. So null double ampersand, and then we'll say true. So because null evaluates to false, and it's on the left-hand side of the operand, it gets returned. So the return from that expression is null. And you could do that with 0, you could do that with undefined, you could do that with an empty string, and so on. And so likewise, if the left-hand side of the operand is something that evaluates to true, in this case we'll just use a Boolean value true because it's easy, then it'll return whatever is on the right-hand side. It doesn't matter what it is. So we could just put a string here, hello world, and you can see it returns that string because true is on the left-hand side of the operand. So with that in mind, let's jump back over here and see how that's being used to dynamically include the role and access level properties from this object literal on the right-hand side of this double ampersand and logical AND operator. So here you can see we say spread, and then inside parentheses, we're spreading whatever the result of this expression is. So here isAdmin is going to evaluate to whatever isAdmin is. In this case, it's true. So because the left-hand side of the operand is true, the right-hand side gets returned. So it actually returns this entire object. So the entire object is what gets spread into the user config. User config already has the base config spread into it, so it has name, age, and occupation. And now because isAdmin variable is true, and it returned the object literal with the role and the access level properties, they were spread into the user config. So now the user config contains name, age, occupation, role, and access level, and you can see that represented here in the output for this table. Now let's move on to the last part of the user config, where we have the isPremiumMember as part of this logical AND operator. So it's on the left-hand side, which means if it returns true, then whatever is on the right-hand side will get returned. and then spread if it's an object or something that's spreadable. And if it returns false, then it'll just return itself, okay? And you can't spread false, nothing will happen there. So in this case, is premium member is actually false. So because it's false, it returns is premium member. It tries to run spread on false, that doesn't do anything. And so what we end up with is name, age, and occupation from the base config. And then because isAdmin is true, we get role and access level. And because isPremiumMember is false, we do not get membership type and we do not get benefits. Now to easily see this in action, we can just go up to the isPremiumMember variable initialization where it's being set to false, and we can change it to true. And immediately when the page updates, you can see that it now includes the membership type and the benefits. So likewise, if we go to isAdmin and we change that to false, it's going to remove role and access level. So right here, we are just constructing an object literal, and then further down in my code, I won't review that part, we're using that object literal to hydrate, if you will, this HTML table, okay? And so with regards to other libraries like React, or even with vanilla JavaScript or Lit or Angular, etc., you can use this syntax with the spread operator inside of an object literal, and anything on the right-hand side will get returned if whatever's on the left-hand side is true. So with spread syntax, you can do it with an object or an array, depending on what you're trying to use it with. Or if you just want to use that expression, you're just trying to figure out a way to simply return, like, if this thing on the left-hand side is true, then give me this component on the right-hand side, then you can just use it by itself. So hopefully you learned a little bit of something here. Essentially the takeaway here, just to summarize, is that we can use the logical AND operator to return whatever's on the right-hand side when whatever's on the left-hand side of the operator evaluates to true. Likewise, if the left-hand side evaluates to false, it'll just return itself, which is false. And because we're using object literals on the right-hand side of the AND operator here, we're also able to combine that with the spread syntax to dynamically include properties on an object literal that we're defining in our code. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.